When you have a lot of different properties that you want to power from the same CMS that you want to have a shared component library for, Headless can really lend itself to that.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Gabe Karp, who's the Managing Director for EMEA at 10up. Gabe, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about 10up and what makes you unique in the agency landscape.
Yeah, so 10up is an enterprise digital agency, clearly with a long history building enterprise-grade sites on WordPress. We've been around for about 10 and a half years, and I think really our difference is in a few things. One is how we focus on contributing back to open source, and specifically within the WordPress community. Two, our scale. So we are, I would say, around 275, if not more, at this stage. And then three, I think, is the way that we work with our clients and really working with them as partners rather than kind of a vendor-supplier type relationship.
So the world's changed a lot over the last year, especially in a digital capacity. What are some of the changes that you've seen?
It's been interesting for us. So we've always been a remote agency since day one. We had an office for a little while in Portland, Oregon, but nobody showed up, so we closed it back down. From my perspective, that positioned us very well, but also not without its challenges. We're used to going on site with our clients. We're used to spending time in person as a team. And so we've really had to adapt to a different kind of remote in the last couple of years from a kind of day-to-day experience. That's really changed how we work together and how we work with our clients. And then I think the other side of this is, every conversation we have, I would say there's a conversation about what is the right technology for the future. And that is where we really get into conversations about Headless and about how does WordPress not just feed my website, but feed my app and feed my data store and all of these other things that really have kind of changed that type of a conversation.
You mentioned contributing to open source. Tell us a little bit about why it's important for agencies to do that. Both as you do, contributing to core WordPress as well as all of the work that you've done in the plugin space. Yeah,
I think for us, when I think about why WordPress, it is so rooted in the fact that it is an open source solution. And that doesn't mean anything if you're not contributing back, right? It's all fine and good to take, but at the end of the day, we also want to be in control of our own destiny, right? And so when we see opportunities to solve a problem for a client that will apply to every other client that we have or to clients that other people have, we want to contribute that back. We don't want to build the same thing 5 times. I think the other thing for us is we get so much out of WordPress as an agency. We have built a really successful business leveraging WordPress for a huge range of clients that it just naturally makes sense for us to contribute back. And it helps us really, again, own our own destiny there, but also to help. We are at a scale where we can afford to have a team that is committed to giving back, that is committed to the open source project. And, I think we feel really strongly that that's our responsibility.
Well, I think one of the big problems that many brands are trying to solve is in the performance area. Always trying to get a faster and faster site. And then obviously with, Google announcing the new Core Web Vitals, algorithm updates, that's become a big driver. What are some things that you typically recommend for enterprises to consider as they try to navigate that area?
Yeah, so we really like to start with what we call a performance budget, and putting performance right at the beginning of the conversation so that we are basically starting by benchmarking and saying, okay, your competitors are doing this well from a performance standpoint. Let's do 20% better. And let's make decisions along the way. When it starts with UX, it starts with design. Let's start talking about performance at that stage. And let's make sure that we are monitoring everything that we do against performance. And so when you have that kind of performance budget set from the beginning, you can make business-driven decisions that says the business values performance because Google cares about performance, and that's how we get our traffic. And therefore, we are willing to invest in performance by spending money here, or if you're a publisher, by not using this kind of ad vendor, or whatever those decisions are.
Do you have some examples of some business successes that you've had in that regard in terms of enhancing the various performance of various client sites?
Den of Geek, which is one of our clients and is a publisher, we saw some really, really big kind of SEO improvements from really focusing on first performance, and then as Core Web Vitals became the thing that we needed to focusing on Core Web Vitals, we see it really kind of playing into, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the driver of success. It is, at this point, for most of our clients, the baseline, right? Mm-hmm. If they are not performing well as it relates to performance or Core Web Vitals, we can't call that success. Right. And so that's kind of the baseline. And then from there, it's how do we build on top of it?
What are you seeing in terms of what clients need from an e-com perspective in the sort of WordPress plus whatever e-com platform?
I think we're just starting into the e-commerce space. We've always done a little bit here and there, but it's not our bread and butter. From my perspective, what I see is people taking WooCommerce or other kind of WordPress-focused solutions a bit more seriously now, and realizing that the benefits that you get out of WordPress as a CMS can also apply back into the e-commerce space. So I think we will see that become more and more of an enterprise solution in the way that WordPress has become an enterprise solution.
You mentioned Headless earlier. How have you seen Headless sort of burst on the scene? And do you have any examples of work that you've done for clients that involved Headless architectures?
Yeah, so we've seen Headless come in a number of different ways. So we've done everything from the publisher who has 25 different properties and building out a Headless component library that then powers every single site that they have, to the one-off site, to the one-off experience that needs to be Headless. I think what I have seen more and more is that you still have to know, even now, you still have to really know, why are you building something Headless? So we just launched a site for Big Issue using the Atlas platform. And what we were able to do there was leverage a component library that another client, or that we had built for another client. They donated that component library to Big Issue. That's they're a social enterprise, and so the client that we built the library for was really excited to donate that. And it allowed us to build a site for them incredibly quickly, but also a site that built off of 2 years worth of work in the publishing space. So it really both accelerated kind of the baseline for them as to what their site could be, but also really sped up development and allowed us to build a cost-effective solution.
What is a perfect use case for a Headless approach?
Yeah, they range, but one of them is when you have a lot of different properties that you want to power from the same CMS, that you want to have a shared component library for. Headless can really lend itself to that, especially if not everything is on the same CMS. You can still use the same front end, you can still use a lot of the same elements of it. So that's a huge benefit. I think the other is, or some of the others are, what does your in-house development team look like, right? A lot of the people who want to use React are companies that are building software with React already. Mm-hmm. And so they have developers who can do work on that, or potentially even leverage component libraries that they've used for products that they build in the website. The other one, and I think this is a little bit kind of more interesting from a creative standpoint, is for our clients who really have an active newsroom or content production arm, it lets us treat the kind of content production element of it as a product itself, and then the front end experience as a totally separate product.
I wonder, what's the best piece of professional advice that you've ever been given?
Building up the team around you to be people you want to work with. And so, I am really lucky that I go into work, and by go into work, I sit in front of my computer at home and spend the day talking to people who I really like and who I respect and who bring so much to the table as individuals. And I think for me, whether it's in a leadership position or otherwise, if you can find an organization where you're surrounded by people that really challenge you, that really kind of bring a level of excitement, that bring a level of expertise to their jobs, it makes the job itself much more fun.
One of the questions we love asking our guests is a book that you're currently reading that you might like to recommend to others.
So I just started reading a book called The Burnout Epidemic, and I think it's something that has been in the news a lot recently, that whether your company is experiencing or not in an acute way, I think it is something that is really important to be educated on. And in Sweden, there's a term called hitting the wall, and it's a medically diagnosed term for burnout. And for me, really what that book is doing is it is pushing me to think about how do you set up a structure where people have the right work-life balance. And it's not about adding benefits or giving people time for meditation or forcing them to take PTO. It's about how do you give people the right balance of accountability and control over their own destiny and the right workloads and those things that I think are really important and really linked to burnout. So yeah, I've been...
Well, who's the author of that?
It's a woman named Jennifer Moss.
Jennifer Moss,
Yeah.
Okay, Burnout.
And she published it in tandem with Harvard Business Review.
Thanks, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That was Gabe Karp, the Managing Director for EMEA at 10up.